Hello, and welcome to Postcards from a Soul and Her Human. I'm the human Gina. Thank you for returning if you have been here before, and if you are new, welcome. I didn't think I'd be recording again so soon. I was kind of definitely feeling what I've been learning about myself, which is to work or record or write when I'm inspired to do so. It took me a long time to figure out really what that meant, and it might sound odd, but how do I know when I'm inspired? And then I became inspired, and it's happened many, many, many times, a lot, very often before I got on this microphone. And now I know what it feels like. And I had to really kind of take apart what my old idea of inspired was, and it's definitely not what it is now, because I was always haunted by the need to be productive. I think I mentioned this before. The need to feel productive in order to feel like I'm doing my part, quote unquote, to create abundance or wealth or success or whatever it is I'm after in this world. And my definition of that is so different now. It is literally on a different planet. Whereas before, effort equals reward. I mean, we were taught that, and it just is not the case anymore. And I believe this is another result of this energetic upgrade that I've received. And I know that, people can call this energetic upgrade just personal growth, and that's fine. But these are biological changes that have taken place in my body that have allowed for these different ways of feeling and thinking and conceptualizing things and understanding things. I have this vastness in my heart now, which translates to vastness in my ability to conceive or receive even ideas about not only my life and what's in front of me or my immediate environment, but about this world and way beyond into the universe. So, personal growth is certainly a term that we can use to describe what's happened here, but it goes much much bigger than that. This is a um, energetic change, and I guess I'll never stop using that word because we are all frequency, we're all vibrating, and I think when I finally was able to conceive of life in that from that perspective, everything just opened up to me. It took away all the limitations of my thinking, my feeling, of my expectations about my life. And what it really had done is it created in me something that my soul was meant for this lifetime. And I talked a little bit about intuitive resonation in the last episode, and it's just become such an important thing in my life now because nothing else matters except for what I feel and what that feeling translates to, whether it be thought or action. So, in this broader mind scope, heart scope, my ability to see things from a place of understanding of what I am at a cellular or even subcellular level has just given me this ability to conceive of the inconceivable. I mean, previous to this energetic change, I have always had a really wide worldview, but now I see things like not through my eyes anymore. I see them through my intuition. And that intuition is what ties me to my spiritual body and all the spiritual bodies in the universe, all the planetary, um, everything that affects me beyond myself. So the influence from the the universe, which is all vibration, it just has put me in this stunning place where I feel like I could cover my eyes and see more clearly than ever before and navigate my life more effectively than ever before. So it's so interesting to verbalize this because these are thoughts and feelings, and my intuition is a connection. It's not something that I often verbalize unless I get on this microphone. So it's such a unique experience for me to share this verbally and to really see how it translates in words, because it seems almost as if that I shouldn't be able to explain this feeling, this knowing, this intuitive connection. And it's put me in a position that through the Gene Keys work that I had done over a year ago now, finding out about my soul type or my energetic map for this lifetime, which again is what you're able to do with the Gene Keys. And again, it's specific to you, not your gender or your birth year. It's specific to your time of birth, your place of birth, the planetary alignments during those time periods. So it's for you or for me specifically. And there may be other people who share characteristics, but mine is mine. It belongs to me. It is that unique. So when I learned about my energetic template basically for this lifetime, one of the things that I learned that my soul was meant to do was trailblaze. And I think I mentioned this really early on, but it's becoming more important for me now because as I'm looking back at the last 2 years of my healing and this transformative time, this transmutation of my energy from a larvae to a dragonfly. And I use larvae and dragonfly. I think it's more descriptive than the caterpillar and butterfly because they're similar, of course. But the dragonfly goes through so much more than the butterfly. It lives for years underwater as a bottom feeder, basically. It in this nymph stage, and it I mean, for a couple of years before it has the instinct to crawl out of the water and sit on a branch or a stem out of the water, and then it stays there for a long time, and then crystallizes there, and then becomes its highest version of itself, the version that can fly. So I will equate my journey from a caterpillar to a butterfly much more accurately or specifically as a nymph to a dragonfly, because the period of time between the lowest version and the highest version of this creature is so much longer. So it for me it feels like the time I spent underwater as a three-dimensional energetic being, basically trapped, breathing water and unable to even conceive of what is above that water line, which is air and real freedom. I have wings now to fly. I'm no longer crawling along the bottom. So this is important for me, and I think important for me to include in the conversation about what I've gone through and who I have become, who I've yet to become. I believe. I think this is a process that will last the remainder of this lifetime. I believe the most difficult parts of it are probably over. And when I say difficult, I mean the most disruptive. They weren't difficult. They were just, I had never experienced them before. So again, this is another example of the trailblazing that my soul has seeked to do throughout this lifetime, and who at this time in my lifetime, at this late 50s, early 60s, had decided this is the time for me to come out of this chrysalis and experience wings for the first time. So I hope that gives you a good visual of what I'm trying to say. So I was thinking about this when I woke up this morning, and again, I whenever I have the time, and I always have the time, and this is something I'm still getting used to linger in bed, especially on a very cool morning with the window open, snuggled under the covers, completely peacefully. I am allowed to kind of marinate in what came through in my dreams or as I slept. And I woke this morning feeling this term, this word or words, trailblazer. And it's funny because I was watching a show last evening about the early settlers, in America, in the West. And those people who drove the wagon trains across, unknown terrain in the wilderness were referred to as pioneers. And a pioneer is basically a trailblazer. So I think this is what awakened this kind of this category of my understanding of myself as a trailblazer, because it really got me thinking about my life previous to this and how uncomfortable it was. Now, of course, when I was in it, I didn't know it was uncomfortable. I was just doing my best every day to do what I thought was what I should be doing. And I think that's what most of us do throughout our lives. What should I be doing? You know, uh, you finish high school, you should go to college or get a job. When you get to a certain age, you should get married and have children. When you get to a certain maturity, you should have a retirement. You should all these things throughout our lifetimes. And I always had so much difficulty with this because I never felt any innate desire or draw to do what I should do. And now in this different energy and in this understanding of what I am as an energetic being in this life form, it's so interesting to me to look back and to see just all the struggle, the stumbling around that I did, the accepting of what I thought I would get used to and would become something I would enjoy, and relationships is the biggest thing that I can, as an example, that I can think of. Whenever I entered in a relationship, I did what I thought I was supposed to do. And even though most of it was completely alien to me and then became uncomfortable and then even dangerous. And this is really, what we suffer when we don't know ourselves. And I couldn't know myself then. Anybody who's thinking or have thought of themselves as a failure during that time of their lives, if you are an awakened being, or if you're still in that time, please don't, because we don't know any better. Just like that nymph underwater, we don't have the ability to understand anything other than what we are immersed in. And when I mean immersed in, I'm referring to this three-dimensional low vibrational energy, which to me, that's the water that the nymph lives in. That heavy, buffering environment. It's like breathing in syrup. We don't know that we can breathe easy and that air is light and that we can fly. We don't know any of this yet, as these nymphs walking around the bottom and feeding on whatever we can find. So for me, this is so interesting because I look back on my life, and from very early on, I was that nymph, and we all are. So just please hear that. But as I'm looking back now, looking at the struggle that I went through to maintain some sort of um, ideal that I was supposed to, like, it just seems ridiculous now to me, and of course it does. It's like a dragonfly looking at a nymph. The dragonfly doesn't understand why that nymph is underwater. Why are you underwater? Look what's up here. There's that was a lower vibrational version of that dragonfly. So all that dragonfly can do with the heart that dragonfly now has, which is open and airy and free of all the baggage of that nymph. All that dragonfly can feel is love for that nymph. And that's what I feel for my lower versions, all my lower versions of me. And I'm sure the higher version of me is looking at me now and feeling the same way. I don't know how high I'm going to fly in this lifetime, but I want to talk about this part because I think it's so important. My soul, and it's right in the template. I can read it. It was in a section of what my soul is here to do, is to trailblaze. And what an affront the beginning of this life was for that my soul, and not an affront as, oh my gosh, it was done to me, but now that I'm here, I see, I'm looking back and realizing what I had to go through to get here. It's almost like you have to go through that dark forest, like in one of my favorite movies, Robin Hood Men in Tights, or no, not that one, excuse me, it was The Princess Bride. I love them both, same actor. uh where they had to go through that forest of I don't remember what it was called, but they had to go through this dark forest with all these creatures and dangers in order to get out and get to their freedom. And that's kind of what this feels like. Like we have to go through our darkness in order to get to the light. And this is what this this soul work is all about. So looking back on it now though is so interesting though, because I it's almost like unbelievable the life that I had to lead in order to get here. So all of the struggle, I remember sitting on a school bus in middle school. And I did this every single day because I would daydream in school. I was one of the best students when I applied myself. And every year, year after year, my teachers would send notes home saying, would be successful if she would just apply herself. That was always the feedback that I got. From a very, very early age, when I applied myself, I got A's. I had no trouble with schoolwork. But most of the time, I had no interest at all. The only time I had real interest, and I remember this time period in my life so clearly, is when we were studying Greek mythology. And I remember the teacher getting up, pointing me out in class after we took some test that was over a long period of time of study, and I had gotten the highest grade in the class. And the teacher pointed to me and said, I just want all of you to know that Gina got the highest score and she's hardly even here because I was habitually absent from school. So much so that this same teacher would call me to get me up in the morning to make sure I came because he was so invested in my potential as a student, as a mind in this world. So, and later I went into an OWE program, which I don't remember what it stands for, but basically I went to school half a day and I went to work half a day. And this was that same teacher's effort to keep me in school because I had no interest in being there. I just felt when I'm sitting on that bus every day going to school, looking out of the window of the bus, I would just feel this draw to be anywhere else but there. I just would say to myself, I can't wait to be old enough to just get a job and not have to be here anymore. And it probably didn't help that I went to 7 elementary schools, 2 2 junior high schools, and 2 high schools. And I finally quit after the 3rd high school. I'm sorry, I went to 1 high school, we moved, I went to a different one, and then we moved back to that same school district, and I was in the first high school again when I finally at 16 decided to quit and get a job. And it wasn't until I was pregnant with my daughter at 26 that I got my general education diploma, my GED. So anyway, even throughout school, I felt this draw to be anywhere else. I had the intelligence to do the work. I just didn't care about it. And it's interesting how that followed me throughout my life. Every job that I had was just a means to an end. I would sit at this job and think, what am I doing here? What else could I be doing? And I would leave that job and go find another. And from 14 years old, when I got my first job, I've always worked. I've never gone, a period of time without working because I always had to work. It was how, I made money and, we all have to do that. So, but it's interesting to look back and see and remember the person that I was, even as a child, how doing the things I was supposed to do really held no interest to me at all. Relationships, I mean, I did them because I was expected to do them, I guess. And I had an interest. I wanted to be in love, but I didn't know what it meant. I had no foundational understanding of what love was because my childhood was so tumultuous and dangerous and abusive. And anyone who's gone through those kind of difficulties, you don't expect love. You just want to survive. So I'm going through this life in this survival mode. And we know that the universe reflects back to us our deepest feelings, our energetic signature. So of course, everything that I encountered was a lesson for me to illuminate my demons, which of course I didn't understand then. Of course I do now. it's so it's so interesting. I keep using the word interesting, but it's really mind-blowing and who I was. And I'm looking back at this poor young woman, this little girl, this baby, trying to get through this life with just her her instincts and really not understanding anything at all. So the relationships I got into, the very first one, which was with a boy, because I was still a teenager. I was 19 before I really had my first boyfriend, serious boyfriend. We were together, I think, 3 years, and I had no idea what to expect. And he was interesting, and I went to work with him, and I became, he was a roofer in South Florida. He laid tar paper on roofs with an air gun and tin tabs, which I don't think they do up north because they don't have snow in Florida. So the roofing foundation is a little different. And I would just go to work with him because I wanted to be with him. I was just with somebody who cared about me, and it got to the point where he became possessive of me, and well, before I went to work with him, I quit my job because he wanted me with him. I think I talked about this briefly before, but I ended up working with him, and I became part of the crew, which was just the two of us. And then when we finally broke up a few years later, and I was with my first, before we were married, but my first husband, who moved to Florida to be with me, it was my truck and it was my crew, which was me and him then. I had learned the whole business and I had become a roofer. I was the only female roofer in the county. I was really the only one I knew of. But I would work on 2, 3 story apartment buildings laying tar paper with tin tabs and an air gun. And I was also very good at it. And I did this until I fell off of a roof and had a close call with a piece of rebar, and I decided I was done with that. And then I went on to whatever was next. And I always had an ability to move on quickly from one thing to another. Anyway, so jobs really didn't hold a lot of interest. The first relationship I had was completely possessive. He didn't want me out of his sight, and finally I broke free of that. Not because I of my honestly, not because I wanted to save myself. I didn't really understand how to do that yet, but because he had an interest in somebody new, so that told me it was time to go. And I just kept working different jobs. I became a health club instructor, which I'd never done before. And I walked into this health club and I just thought, well, this is an interesting place to work. I was in South Florida. I didn't drive. Had a roommate. I didn't really have anything. I walked to work, and I walked into this health club and asked for a job, and they said, "Well, your audition is basically doing an aerobics class." And back in the early 80s, this was really big. People did aerobics. And I had never done it before. I'd never taken aerobics class before. And I just said, sure. And I went in and I did a class. It lasted about an hour, and they hired me and they said it was amazing. And I was able to, I had a whole class of people. I was able to inspire these people. We did all these amazing things. I had no idea what I was doing, but this is how I lived my life. I winged everything. Another example of this was later in life when after my first husband and I broke up, and now I have a 3-year-old daughter. When we broke up, I got a job as a bartender because I wanted to work nights so I can be with my daughter during the day. I didn't use daycare. This is so funny. And here I am, this nymph, with I have no eyes. I don't know how to I don't know what to do what's expected of me. I'm just doing my best. I get this job as a bartender at I don't know how old I was. My daughter I was 30 years old, and I had been working at another job too, but I got this job and I had no idea how to bartend. I also don't drink. I don't think I've ever mentioned this before, but I've never drank in my life. My mother was a violent alcoholic. So at a very early age, I was kind of tuned into that as being a direction I did not want to go. So I had really sharp instincts. I've always, and this is really how I survived. And the only drink I had ever had when I think I was 21 years old, when I was in a bar, and I asked for a Kahlua and cream because I was curious about alcohol, and I took a sip of it and it tasted like chocolate milk, and I said, "Well, why would you drink this when I can just have chocolate milk?" And that was it. That was my only experience with alcohol in my entire lifetime. And it's because my mother was a violent person when she drank. So, as a young person, I just knew not to drink. So this is my intuition, my instincts protecting me. So I've never drank. I have no idea about alcohol, how to make a drink. I didn't take a mixology course. I just went in and answered the ad. And because I was cute, I got the job. And I just had to figure it out. And luckily it was a shot in a beer place. So I did pretty good. I made great tips and I worked there, I don't know, about a year. It's kind of amazing. The first time I had to make a Long Island iced tea was an absolute disaster. And the pina colada, which was a rarity to be even ordered, was a mess. But other than that, I had a book and I just looked things up and I just did it. This is how I live my life. This to me is that nymph underwater. So I just kept going through my life and kind of taking what came to me and made the best of it. But I never really understood from uh, my intuition never, and maybe that's not a right way to put this. I never felt comfortable in the roles I was supposed to be in. So I just kind of did the best I could. I almost like I had, like if you would imagine an alien coming to Earth, and this is probably honestly more true than not, and having to fit in with the human customs. I mean, that's how I felt growing up and all through my adulthood. Even having a child was very alien to me. I didn't think I could be a good mother. I got pregnant accidentally. I would have never purposely had a child. I just didn't know to do that. It didn't feel like something I was meant to do. But the universe or my soul knew when it was time for me to have a child, took me out of the abusive relationship with my first boyfriend who emotionally abused me and then left me, which thank God. Well, he didn't leave me. He just met someone else and I left because God, who knows what that would have been. But I characterized this in the article Soulmate that I wrote, and I talked about this briefly last time, as a time out from my karmic lessons and the time to have my child. That she was meant to be born into this loving family where she would be cherished. And she absolutely was. Now, how can a child be cherished by a mother who is completely blind? It just happened because I did everything opposite of what was done to me. And I would say that to myself all the time, just do what you know, don't do what you know not to do, kind of the same as learning to be a bartender or everything that I did. I just did the best I could. And I did the things that I thought, honestly, I did the opposite of what my parents did. I was born in a household of violence and abuse, sexual abuse and physical violence, emotional violence. So I knew, pretty much what not to do. And I know that might sound a little crazy, but it really helped me understand that if I just loved my child, even though I was full of fear, that everything would be okay because that was something I didn't have. And how the hell did I manufacture that or how did that come into my world? I don't know. All I know is that my soul brought me to this place where this child came into my life and I was able to love this child, even though I was sure I would be a horrible mother. But that's not what happened. I was not only a good mother, I was eventually able to really see the purpose of this happening in my life and really cherish that. My daughter and my ex-husband, my first ex-husband, was just wired to cherish her and his whole family, who he had 9 siblings. So my daughter has all of these aunts and uncles and 21 first cousins in this loving, abundant family where I have just me or have had just me and there was no one else. So, it's so interesting to look back and see the purpose and the emerging or the unfolding of this karmic life with this time out where this baby was born. And then during my whole 25 years with my last ex husband, my daughter had her father. So my ex husband, my karmic ex husband, the one that I was with for 25 years, never really cared for my daughter. And I guess it makes sense knowing the man that he turned out to be. He didn't have an emotional connection to me. Of course, he didn't have one to her either. He went through the motions and he did the things he was supposed to do, but he never had an emotional connection with her. That was with her dad. So it was not required of him to be a father to her, which of course was by design because he was my karmic soulmate, not hers. And this whole 25-year relationship, my daughter has full use of her father. And her father and I, after a period of adjustment, became close friends and we remain close friends. Therefore, that cohesive family unit was always there for my daughter. It was never broken because she was not meant to come from a broken home. Isn't that outrageous? That even though her father and I divorced, she never lost that connective nuclear family. We were always there, we just looked different. So all through my relationship with my last husband, my karmic ex-husband, my first ex-husband and my daughter had a very close relationship where we shared custody. And actually, when my daughter became a teenager and it became difficult for her to live in both places, she lived with her father full time. From I think she was 14 till she went to college at 17 or 18, whatever she was. So she never came from a broken home. And you can argue with me all you want, but that's the truth. Because she was meant to be cherished. She was not meant to come from violence or anger or abuse. Even though I did, and normally that cycle is repeated, but it wasn't. Even though I was still that person, stuck in that low vibrational underwater. So because she didn't come from a broken home, she thrived. And my ex-husband, my karmic ex-husband, because he didn't have a deep connection to her, when we split, she didn't feel any real loss. And I've had this discussion with her many times because she always had her dad. And my ex-husband, my karmic ex-husband, was just someone in her life. And I believe this is because of the way she's wired as well. She's wired and she's told me this before, that she feels love for everyone, but she also feels like she knows where she ends and we begin, and she's never felt alone by herself. That even if we left this world, me and her father, she would be fine. And I believe that is part of the design of her soul. That is what her soul intended for her in this lifetime, because she's meant to go off and do things on her own. She's not meant to have an unnatural or a overblown sense of attachment to the humans, quote unquote, in her life, including her mother. And I discussed this before, that because we're soulmates, we can separate. I can go to the other side of the world and we don't lose each other. Or she can. We'll see what happens. So she did not come from a broken home. And we talk about my karmic ex husband now. And although she feels for him, she doesn't feel any loss without him in her life. So again, watching the karmic design of this lifetime has been so fascinating. How clear it is that my soul has been focused on her karmic lessons, learning her lessons from the very beginning of my life, from the challenges that my parents set before me and the path that they helped usher me onto, because I was just all I could think of was survival. But how innately gifted I was intuitively, even though I didn't understand what intuition was at the time. And how my emotional intelligence, or my ability to see others' souls, has really been the gift that has gotten me here. It has been the one thing that I possess. My instincts and my intuitive connection, even though it was difficult for a long time for me to know what it was, got me to this place where I am now free of the karmic debt that I carried into this lifetime. And my daughter was never burdened with it, because naturally it is the next generation that gets the burden of that karmic debt. But I not only erased it for her, and I say I mean my soul, because this was the design of this lifetime, was to get rid of this karmic debt that I likely have carried into lifetimes. But this is the lifetime I was meant to heal it, or to pay that debt. So because of this awakening after this horrendous relationship with my karmic ex-husband, and the fact that my daughter she never needed to be emotionally reliant on him, because she had her father full time. God bless that man. I love him so much. Will always be one of the best friends that I will ever have in this life, the father of my child, because I see his soul and I know who he is, even though we went through so much difficulty together. She has that unconditional love of family. She is cherished, just like the daughter she just recently brought into the world is now cherished. So you see how that karmic path, I walked it. I had this beautiful baby. I set her on a completely different path. And I kept walking my karmic path until I could pay that debt. I'm not taking any credit for that as a human because I did not have the wherewithal to know what was happening at the time. But she was insulated from all of this because she was meant to be. So she does not have to carry my debt into her life. It's not it's not meant to be that. She is an indigo child, my daughter. She came into this world as a soul mostly free of karma. And I say mostly because we all have some. But her life is meant to be lighter than mine, much, much lighter. Because she's not busy paying karmic debt, she can live a life of purpose. And part of her purpose is bringing the little golden child she just brought into this world. And who I don't know how many other golden children she's going to be responsible for bringing into this world. I don't know. But her job, her soul wanted this for this lifetime for her. She is here to change things. She is not here to follow the status quo. I did it as best I could, knowing I wasn't wired to do it. Now I see that. But if I was wired to do it, I would have never been where I am now. So, that nymph was meant to come out of the water in this lifetime and grow these wings. She was already born out of the water. She was born with wings, my daughter. And her daughter is literally an angel, literally and figuratively and emotionally and spiritually, every way possible. So when you can see things from this high, vast perspective, it's so easy to come to terms with what happened to me because, of course, it had to happen. And this is why at this age, this time in my life, I have this incredible love for everyone and everything. Doesn't matter what you did to me. Because in all honesty, you didn't do anything to me. These were relationships I was meant to have in order for my soul to evolve to where I am now. So you are cast members in the theater that is my life, in the role that I chose. So you may have played the villain, and I'm sorry if you were cast in that role, but you agreed to do it before you came here. So I'm not only grateful for what you did, but I love you immeasurably for the sacrifice that you made in this lifetime to play the villain. And I feel this way about my karmic ex-husband. I was telling my daughter this the other day, last week. I have such love for this man because he gave up the opportunity to be an evolved being so he can play the role of this vampire narcissist in my life. He did this for me. I mean, put that into context. Take away your desire to blame. Take away your need for your troubles to belong to be to someone else, for someone else to be responsible. Take that away and see what is truly there. If we are here to have a human experience and we're here playing a role that our souls chose, and believe that or not, I guess if you choose not to, then you suffer with that choice. I was showed this very clearly in the gene keys because of the map that my soul created for this lifetime. I was meant to be a trailblazer. So when I look back at this life of karmic lessons, of course, I had to blaze that trail. It was one form of trailblazing. I had to, as a soul with very little human instinct, I had to trailblaze or pioneer my way through a human life. That's how I feel about what I went through. I feel like I was an alien in the human world trying to assimilate in a human form. And of course, I had to be that alien in the human world struggling in order to, in this same lifetime, I'd now identify as an alien in an alien world. I don't have to be human. I don't have to identify as a human being. I'm living a human life and I'm invested in that 100%, but I'm not human. Which, like I said last time, gives me great comfort because now everything I've gone through makes fucking sense. Oh my God, this is just so amazing to verbalize this. I mean, so I was a pioneer through this world as an alien in a literally an alien environment. I came from a different star system. I'm on a planet I don't know or understand. I'm in a body I have no idea what to do with. And I'm having these human relationships, not really understanding and feeling very awkward the whole time. Awkward even in my body. I never really felt comfortable in this human form. I've always felt, my energy was always just a little off. I never really slept well. I never really felt fully energetic. I never really had full use of what I thought I should as a human. I always had frailties in my energy and I never understood why. Now I get it. This human body is like walking underwater for an alien. I'm confined within it. And I never got really used to how to utilize it. And I think that if I were meant to have a karmic life and die with this karmic debt and carry it on to the next, I would have probably had a much easier time in this earthly suit because I'm meant to be here much longer. I almost feel like I've done this so many times. I don't identify with the human anymore or very much. And I just want to kind of move on to the alien part because that's the part I'm comfortable with. So when I'm able to look at my life from that lens, from that perspective, as this alien walking this human world, of course I struggled. And on top of that, I had all of these debts I had to pay and I didn't know the currency. So I'm trying to do my best to just get through all this and not to survive it. And all the while I'm underwater walking. And when you try to walk underwater, you're walking in slow motion and nothing feels right. And you're breathing this heavy air and nothing is comfortable. That's how I've always felt. And honestly, the same in relationships. I've never felt like a partner to someone. I've always felt like just do your part. Sex was like that for me. I mean, I was abused sexually early on. I was molested by my father. I had one other situation as a preteen where I was molested. I had another where I was escaped molestation when I was in my early 20s. I was sexualized as a young person because I was a cute girl, and I mean, it just is what it is. I had adult men hitting on me throughout my childhood and into my teens, and I learned that as a young teenager to protect myself. So you can understand that my sexual awakening was deeply flawed. It was damaged before I had a chance to engage. So, I didn't have my first sexual experience till I was 19. And it was with my first boyfriend who was emotionally abusive, who held me captive in our apartment, who I ended up quitting my job and working with him and I became a roofer, which was kind of cool. But again, this my ability to survive and my instincts were just all I had. So for me, sexuality was always a challenge. And, I even between the relationship with my first husband and my second husband, my karmic ex husband, I had a relationship specifically to learn to enjoy sex. Where I dated somebody I wasn't really interested in who was attractive. And I sought out just a physical relationship in order to teach myself to enjoy sex because quite honestly, I saw my father's face whenever I was engaged intimately with my first husband and my first boyfriend. It was devastating. So I wanted to overcome that. I wanted to become sexual. And I did my best to do that. And I was successful to some degree. So when I met my second ex husband, my karmic ex husband, I call him my second ex husband. It's funny. Yeah, my second husband, my future ex-husband, my now ex-husband, I was pretty good in that department. I wanted to explore. I wanted to enjoy sex. I wanted to overcome. And I did. I really did enjoy sex for a long time. But then life happens and I entered into premenopause and then menopause and our sex life slowed down although it never ended and then all of these things arose and I started to see this man and who finally ended up telling me one of the last times I spoke to him about our relationships was that He needed sex, and sex drove everything that he did. Therefore, we had nothing but our physical relationship. So again, I mean, I was heartbroken. I was devastated. I lived with a narcissist vampire for 25 years. And I spent months recovering, and 7 specifically, before I really realized, holy shit, what was happening? It only took me 7 months to get through that heartache because it really wasn't heartache. I didn't love this man, not in the traditional sense. It wasn't my heart that was broken for a love that I lost. It was my energy that was broken for a life that was lost. So, when people ask me now, and just yesterday I ran into a neighbor, she said, I noticed you're alone. I worry about you a lot. She says, are you lonely? And I looked at her and grinned. I said, absolutely not. And she said, well, do you miss him? And I almost laughed and I had to stop. And I said, no, ma'am, I do not miss him. And I felt for her because I understand the traditional thing to say is, are you okay? And are you good alone? And yeah, I am. As an alien in this human form, being alone is where I'm most at home. So I felt a little bad about my exuberant answer when I said, almost wanted to say hells to the no, but she's 85 years old and I didn't want to do that to her. It just really made me realize how incredibly joyful I have been since I've been on my own. And I was telling my daughter yesterday that, this soulmate, this twin flame is due in my life someday. And that's wonderful. Great abundance and wealth, money is due in my life someday. And that is amazing. A relocation to an island in the middle of nowhere is due to come into my life one day. I believe all those things. I've been told that over and over. But I've gotten to a place in my human sobriety, and I guess that's the best way I can put it. I've overcome my humanness. I'm now sober from it. I understand that my aloneness is really all that I need. And that thinking about being in a relationship again sounds wonderful for all the idealistic reasons. Having a partner, having someone to lean on, having someone in your old age. Yes, all those things. Somebody to give birth to ideas with, this man I'm supposed to share a lot with. But when I think about my life right now, after 2 years of this transmutation, 2 years I'm sorry, 58 years underwater, and 2 years on that branch in that chrysalis, and now being born as this dragonfly with these newly formed wings. I mean, I don't want to say that don't care, but I'm good either way. I told my daughter, I am so comfortable and now in my own skin for the first time in this lifetime that I don't need anything. I have everything I could possibly want. And if a man walks into this equation, fabulous. But if he doesn't, equally fabulous. And this is not something I have to convince myself of. This is what living without need feels like. I could die tomorrow and I would die a happy person, just completely grateful for this lifetime. I would not regret a thing. I wouldn't miss anything. I have everything. There's no need to hold on to anything. So, yes, it would be wonderful to have a partner in this life, but it's not necessary. I have everything that I need emotionally, energetically, physically in my human life. I have all the abundance I need, at least for now. I don't have to worry about tomorrow. That's something I learned. Is that abundance is a state of mind and it is now, it is not a future state. So if all I'm searching for is to feel abundant later, I'm feeling lack now, which is what the universe mirrors back. And no, I didn't do it for that reason. I didn't have that understanding. But now I do. So, of course, now I can manifest at will. I don't have to wonder how it works. All I have to do is trust it. So, I was a trailblazer throughout my early life into just the last couple of years where I was an alien in an alien world. And I had to blaze a trail in an alien landscape. in this human form, underwater, learning to breathe this thick, heavy air. But now when I look at, and I went through the gene keys briefly again just to kind of refamiliarize myself with my template. And when I saw that one of the greatest purposes of my soul in this lifetime is to trailblaze, now I'm trailblazing in a completely different way. I'm still a pioneer going down a road completely in the unknown. I mean, when I left my ex husband, my karmic ex husband, almost 3 years ago, because I left him 3 years ago. The divorce was 2.5 years ago. He didn't leave my home until almost 2 years ago, but it was 3 years ago that I left him. I left him completely in faith that there was something better for me at 58 years old, even though I had no idea if I would be alone the rest of my life. And this is the fear that we all carry because we fear, and this was something that was said in the show I watched last night about pioneers. One of the main characters said that the thing that humans fear more than anything else is the unknown. This has never been my fear. I've always been searching for something that felt comfortable, so going into the unknown was always something that was more comfortable. So that's why I was able to always keep moving in my life. I didn't need to stay anywhere. I never felt roots anywhere. So when I left my karmic ex-husband, and it was the most difficult thing I'd ever done because it was a karmic relationship. It was meant to be difficult. Otherwise, I would have left way too early. So because our energies were so deeply entwined together, like tree roots, I had to literally cut the tree of my life down and yank those roots out. And it was a very difficult thing to do. And I think I described it in my article Soulmate as I had to drain his essence from my energy. And I had to do it with intention. And otherwise he would still be in my energy and I'd still be drawn back to him and I would still be in that karmic state. And this is why I believe that he is not healed. And maybe he's not meant to be, I don't know. And I feel so deeply for him because he sacrificed that for me. I mean, look at it that way. He chose that role as my karmic soulmate in this lifetime. He's in his late 50s too. He chose to sacrifice what he could have done, which is what my soul is doing. And I don't know if he'll find joy in this lifetime or not. It's not my path. But he sacrificed that, at least in part, so I can come to this place in my life where I have this awareness, this awakening. And I can unleash this love in my heart on this whole world and this universe, because this expands to the universe. I mean, one of my dreams for my future, and you can laugh at me if you want, I guess it's going to sound funny, is to be sitting in my home, in the backyard of my home, on the ocean, in this island in the middle of nowhere, under the Milky Way, which I can see every night, and host a visit from some galactic neighbor who's from another star system, who comes into my rural backyard and sits with me and my partner, my twin flame, and has whatever meal or drink or beverage we're sharing and talking about how do we create a relationship between our worlds as an ambassador of sorts to alien life. I mean, that's where my mind goes when I think about my future. It's not about having a nice house and it's not about anything human. I mean, I want love and I want stability because I am human right now, but I don't dream human. And I think that, when I created the podcast, What God's Dream, I think that's what I was getting at. My dreams are not grounded in the human reality. They are ethereal. I want peace for humanity because I see how simple it is to achieve. I shouldn't say that. How simple the idea of peace is, but how difficult it is to achieve because it requires us to awaken to it. So, you know, love for my ex-husband is easy, of course. Oh my God, he gave me the greatest gift I've ever received besides the birth of my child and now my grandchild. He gave me this freedom. So I will always cherish him for that. And anyone else who ushered me down this karmic path. So now I'm trailblazing in a completely new way. I left my ex husband, not knowing what the future held. A year later, I get encouraged by my soul team through a tarot reading to leave my business. And that was difficult. I remember throwing a little tantrum that night after that reading where I was encouraged to leave if I wasn't happy. Throwing a tantrum. I wrote about this in my book. Why am I got to leave my business because of him? Why, this is my livelihood. I don't know what I'm going to do. Blah, 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 all the reasons why I can't change. And then the next morning I woke up just knowing I had to do it, even though I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And I marched in there and I sat him down and I said, listen, it's time for me to go. And I expected all of this pushback from him. This is another part of this. He didn't push back. And he gave me what I asked for in order for me to leave. This buyout, this payout that he gave me, which I didn't think he would do. So this is his soul, who's this vampire narcissist, who now is when it's time for me to let go of him, does not fight me. He doesn't try to hold on. He still is in certain ways, don't get me wrong, because he has not gotten my essence out of his energy. But he knew intuitively, because his soul planned for it, to let me go from that business and to support me leaving. Now, think about that. How many vampire narcissists would support their victim, their energy source, who would support them leaving them? The classic description of that narcissist is to hold on with claws and teeth. So look at that dichotomy and how unusual and beautiful that was. That I sat him down and said, I love this business, but I don't feel like I belong here anymore. I did the best I could to arrange things for you. I will continue to do the best I can to make sure. And again, my soul had been making these arrangements all the time. My employee left. I transferred her. I eliminated her job and gave all that work to a sister auction hall because we were an auction hall at the time. I said, let's get rid of this extra warehouse that is just a drain on our finances. Excuse me. We got rid of that. And then I have this realization that I need to go, and all of this is done. And he is now in a position where he can handle this on his own. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want to hurt him. I wanted to support him too, but I knew I had to go. So when I sat him down and said, I need to go, he said, I understand. He didn't fight me. And I expected him to say, well, if you want to go, go, you're not getting anything, which is kind of what he did when I wanted a divorce. When he told me, when I thought I wasn't going to be able to keep the house. But again, that worked out too. Do you see what I'm saying? This is that divine design, this design of my lifetime that he was such a big part of. So at this crossroad where I was meant to go, he was there to support me, even though it was completely out of character for him to do it. But this was the divine plan, was for me to go and to be supported. And I've been retired nearly a year now. And because other things have happened, and one big thing that happened recently was I had a big bill that it was due, that I had put the money aside to pay, a very big bill. And I got the bill and I didn't owe it anymore. Not only didn't I owe it, but I had something coming back to me. So all this money I put aside to pay this big bill, I no longer had to pay. So now my retirement is extended another 6 months. Do you see what I'm saying? This is my soul's design to keep me supported through this transmutation, this transitional time that I'm in. So the time I'm laying on this stem as this chrysalis, after coming up from the water as that nymph, before I break out of this chrysalis and become this dragonfly, I am completely supported. This universe has taken care of every aspect of my life, including money. Like I said, every few months, I'm like, well, I'm going to have to get a job. Now I have to get a job. Well, now, but somehow the limited payout that I got, which was very limited, it wasn't enough for me to cover my bills. That coupled with the the liquidation of the auction items that we agreed to share was enough money to keep me home. It's fascinating how it worked out. But of course, now I trust this because look at the example I've been given. I've been taken care of this whole last year. And my ex-husband is still supportive. Although I don't have a personal relationship with him anymore, when we have to talk over email about our business, which we still have some business, he's very respectful. He's still supportive. It is mind-blowing how this has worked out. So it would be by my very ignorance that I would not see the divine plan emerging throughout my entire life, unfolding in front of me one step at a time. So because I'm supported by the universe and now I know I don't have to think about that anymore, I live in this state of abundance. I have all that I need. So that future soulmate, although the idea of him is wonderful, I don't need him, quote unquote. I don't need anything. So this feeling of abundance is like roses growing inside my body and now they're growing outside of my body. And before I know it, my entire world, as far as I can see, is going to be a bed of roses. Because this abundance in my heart, in this trust, this faith in my future, in my destiny, has afforded me this ability to relax in my life and just trust. I am now this machine, this manifesting machine. And I never thought of it as manifesting. And I'm actually saying this for the first time, that my ability or my desire or my capacity to get comfortable trusting this universe, that if I just relax and stop needing anything, needing to produce, needing to make money, needing to be in a relationship, needing to go, 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 that the only way this works in this new energy, effort is not rewarded, receiving is. So I no longer have to go find it, it now comes to me. This is the difference between personal growth and energetic upgrade. My energy is now wired at a default to manifest abundance. Because I learned my karmic lessons, paid my karmic debt, I got this incredible energetic upgrade, which I friggin' chronicled the whole time through this podcast and through all my articles and my book that I'm writing. Through the book, I'm chronicling it from the very beginning. I didn't start this podcast till May of last year, so a full year went by before that, before this came up. So because I did all that, and I don't want to say did all that work because it wasn't work. This is just what naturally happened. This was the divine plan of this lifetime. I'm now in this energetic frequency where I don't need anything. Need does not compute. And when I feel need briefly, it just drains away because it doesn't belong here anymore. Just like fear or lack don't belong in this lighter energy, it only is supported in the lower densities. So not only do I not have to worry, I'm not able to worry. It doesn't compute. So so I'm trailblazing again. So now I'm this alien in this human form. I finally understand how to use this body. I figured out the controls. I'm no longer underwater. I have wings now. I can fly. So the body doesn't feel cumbersome anymore. I feel more like my alien self. And if that sounds weird to you, I just ask you to open your mind. Because thinking of it from this context, alien human rather than spirit and spiritual and non-spiritual, it's a whole world of different connotation. I am an alien in a human form. And now that I've elevated in this higher vibrational frequency of energy, which I'm made of, I don't feel awkward in the depths of the density I was in. So now I'm trailblazing all over again. I left my last ex-husband not knowing what was ahead for me at all. I left my business not knowing how I was going to make money. And I'm in this new place having gone through that transmutation, which took place after I didn't know. Before what I'm saying is, before I knew any of this was going to happen, I just trusted that something had to be better than what I was doing, and I just took that leap of faith. It's funny because one of the readings a long time ago, when it was about my twin flame union, which is due sometime in his lifetime, I was described as the person in the union who just took the leap of faith, who did what I was meant to do without knowing why. And what that was referring to is the written work and the podcasting, that I was kind of encouraged intuitively. And of course, my daughter was the ones who suggested the podcasting and the writing. So not always just intuitively, to create this work, this body of work that I'm now, will be my legacy, which is the written work of my articles, the spoken word of my podcasts, and wherever this might lead me in the future, and my book that I will leave. This is, this will be my legacy, but I didn't know any of this was going to happen at the time. I just knew there had to be something. My soul was just pushing me out of that miserable comfort zone that I was in. Leaving my business was, I didn't know I was going to have to do that. I'm like, are you serious? This is my livelihood. I created this. But once I let go, I knew even though I had no ground beneath me, I knew I was going where I was meant to go. I was being carried there. But now that I'm in this space where I can look back and see that although there was no ground beneath me, I was supported, I was carried. I now have firm ground beneath my feet. And it is Earth. And I love her. And I'm connecting more and more to her every day as a means to stay grounded so I don't float off in my alien world, because that's where my soul is from. I'm meant to be here 100%, but to trailblaze. So I'm not meant to know what's ahead for me. So when I was described in the reading a long time ago about, he was described as the one who had a prescribed path, that he would have a strategy that he would carry out and he would build it out into the world. And he would be supported 100% to do that by the universe and his soul team. So he would be materially successful and not necessarily spiritual. The way I was described was, I was the one who took a leap of faith, not knowing what was ahead for me, and just started creating this without knowing why. That's how I was described many, many, many months ago. And of course, now I'm thinking about it because that memory is resonating with what I'm saying. I am the one who just took the leap of faith and left, although very miserable surroundings. When I was in these surroundings, I didn't know they were miserable. And I think that's something we need to really understand, that when you're underwater, you don't know you're underwater. You don't know that if you break the surface, that there's air to breathe. And if you break the surface and climb out onto that stem, there are wings to be grown, and now you can fly. We don't know any of this. So when I say I left a miserable comfort zone, I'm saying that with all sincerity. Although I was miserable as a soul, as a human, I didn't know there was anything better for me. Actually, I was pretty sure there wasn't, because of all I had gone through. How could I love somebody? I didn't love myself. I knew that intuitively. But instead of worrying about what I wouldn't have, I just knew there had to be something more for me in this world. And I said this to my daughter 3 years ago. I said, I know this happened for a reason. I just don't know what it is yet. And now here I am 3 years later, 2.5 years after the divorce, almost 2 years after him finally moving out of my home. And I'm on this firm ground, understanding exactly who I am and in complete embracement of why I'm here. And in complete faith that I will be provided for the rest of this lifetime, and that I will not have to make effort to do that. Because my job is to trailblaze. This is why my soul came here. So every day I get on this microphone, every time I write in my book, or I think honestly and feel I am in an alien place. I'm in a place I'd never been before, in new territory. In this earth plane, let me make that clear, not alien. In this earth plane, I am blazing a trail through this lifetime because I have no idea where this podcast is going to take me. What opportunity might come to me because of this, or because of my written work, or because of my outlook, or because I might speak to somebody who might hear something. Who knows what's going to happen next? I have no idea. Am I going to be with this twin flame or not? I really don't know for sure. I've been told so, but I don't know anything. So letting go of that need to know is really what I'm meant to do, and why I'm so comfortable now without knowing. So my soul is meant to trailblaze, and I didn't realize until this morning that I have been doing it my entire life. I only identified with it now as this fully formed human with this fully formed alien inside. It is so incredible that I am a trailblazer, and I left the depths of my nymphhood to get here, and the journey was so crazy, and it's now so beautiful looking back. It's just remarkable how, with perspective, we can see everything, and I don't have to fear my future. It just feels remarkable, and I'm just so excited. So I'm sitting in this place of faith and trust, knowing that I have all that I need and I will never need anything else. And I'm so excited that I'll be able to report this out when the time comes. So I'm going to leave it there. And of course, it's 1:11. It's so funny. I'm just having such a good time. So thank you for listening to my rambling. I hope it wasn't rambling. And I hope that thank you for listening. If you have listened to the whole thing, I just feel so grateful. And it honestly doesn't matter if no one's listening. I'm so excited to be here every day. So grateful. Oh, thank you so much for listening. I wish you peace. I wish you intuition. I wish you a great life. Thank you so much.